Okie dokie, I believe we are all the way live. Hello and welcome to my graveyard. I am your host of the evening, the Cemetery Man from Salem, Mass. Always taking names of kicking candy ass. Live and Luke here with you on Grande's Graveyard. Welcome back to another edition of the show. And tonight we dive into a horror series, a horror franchise that, believe it or not, I have actually lived for the entirety of this film franchise. It's crazy. I know. It's funny. We've talked about Halloween and Elm Street and Friday the 13th and all of these franchises that were started before my lifetime. But tonight on Grande's Graveyard, we will be discussing the Insidious film franchise. And it's crazy enough, I've seen all four in the theater in their prime theatrical runs. So I thought this was kind of a meta show in and of that fact. And this is a series that I've sort of been wanting to get around to for a long time. And it was fun to revisit these movies because a couple of them is the first time I had rewatched since theaters. Of course, we'll be discussing the original film, Insidious, directed by James Wan, written by Leigh Whannel, and to me, my all-time favorite movie theater going experience for a new film. This one takes the cake. I'm excited to get into that story. Of course, Insidious Chapter 2, the sequel, which I don't know. We'll get there. Insidious 3, of course, Leigh Whannell's directorial debut, and then Insidious the Last Key, which I think is sort of underrated. But we're going to be talking all things Insidious tonight. I'm super excited to be live on Living Color on the Graveyard with y'all. We got a couple people in the chat. AJ's Happy Fun Time channel's in the house. Good brother AJ Zitro. Hello and welcome to my graveyard, my friend. Welcome, my friend. How are you? Matteo Appendino was in the house. Ciao, Grande. Matteo, what's going on, good brother? Hope all is well with you tonight. But yeah, no, I had been wanting to get to this for a long time. And, this was, I figured, the perfect week to do it. Now, I have a couple things stored and planned for the weeks coming up. I'm thinking of doing a show where when good directors go bad. I think that would be a fun episode of Grande's Graveyard. I'm not sure what week that's going to be. I'm also thinking of diving into Fulci again. I want to do maybe some 70s Fulci stuff and maybe that documentary Fake for Fulci or Fulci for Fake, whatever the hell it was called. So that's where we're going to be, a couple weeks from now. But I figured tonight we dive right into the Insidious franchise, which I'm a huge fan of. AJ says, I get these confused with The Conjuring and all their spinoffs. So The Conjuring was James Wan's follow-up to Insidious, and then that movie sparked 100 different spin-offs and things like that. And I mean, I'm not a fan of the universe. I'm certainly not. I don't think it applies to horror as well as it applies to those Marvel movies or DC movies or whatever. But Insidious, I really appreciate that it's just a series. It's a 4-film series. That's it. And maybe, just maybe down the road, we're going to get a part 5. I know it's been rumored Patrick Wilson would be the director if we get that, but we'll discuss that a little bit at the end. I really am a big fan of this movie. I don't know if you've seen it, but we're going to get into the original film in just a moment. Yeah. I'm thinking a 70s Fulci episode down the road. If not, maybe even next week. I'm not sure. I haven't really mapped out what days I want to do things, but we're going to come to a decision on that in the coming days. So I promise we will figure that out. But I guess, without further ado, we could jump right into this son of a bitch. I've got a nice little drink. So cheers, y'all. Cheers to everybody. I am chilling like a villain on this Thursday night. Cheers to a safe, happy weekend. Oh, man. Only the good stuff. I watched Fake for Fulci was good. Yeah, it was really good. I don't know. I've been wanting to maybe discuss that one on the show and maybe some of his works from the 70s because I have done an episode on the Gates of Hell trilogy. And that was back when I was in the studio. So that's an older episode, but I love that episode. I love doing that episode. So I was like, let me dive into some of his other like lesser talked about 70s work. I'm thinking The Psychic and Don't Torture a Duckling. That's the two I really want to cover, and then maybe the documentary, but we'll get there. But without further ado, I guess we could dive right in and stop holding you all in suspense. Let's flash the clocks back 12 years ago when I was the rifled age of 13 years old, and I saw a trailer for a little movie that was up and coming called Insidious. And it was going to be directed by James Wan. And James Wan, for people who don't know, for people who's living under a rock in the horror community over the past 20 years or so, James Wan had directed the original Saw. And Saw took off, became the biggest horror franchise of the post-2000 era. And then he didn't decide to keep riding that Saw train, which was an interesting career decision. Instead, he decided, hey, I want to make a different movie every time out, which I really, really respect. And I think a lot of the West Coast elite guys, whether it be Eli Roth or Alex Aja, there's a ton of West Coast elite talent, but a lot of them kind of do the same things or do remakes, and they do the same thing over and over and over. But that's why I appreciate James Wan. He's not really a filmmaker that wants to do that. He could have directed Saw 2 through 7 if he wanted to, but he didn't want to do that. He said, hey, I want to do something different. I want to do something original. And thus came Dead Silence in 2006, which a lot of people do not like. I really have grown to like the movie. I think it's a perfect October watch. It's a creepy, killer doll movie with this ventriloquist tale and the nursery rhyme. And I've really grown to like Dead Silence. But that movie was a flop, critically, commercially a flop after the success of Saw. So it was his sophomore slump. Then he did a little movie called Death Sentence with Kevin Bacon. It's almost a, spiritual remake to Death Wish with Charles Bronson, and it even has the same writer, and it very much feels like James Wan's remake of Death Wish, but instead it's Kevin Bacon, and Garrett Hedlund plays the lead heel. I really like Death Sentence. However, that movie comes out the same week as Rob Zombie's Halloween, and Rob Zombie's Halloween, of course, made a lot of money, and in turn, Death Sentence was a huge commercial failure. So after the success of Saw and making a ton of money on $1 million budget and creating the most popular horror franchise of this pretty much of this millennium to this point, James Wan hit a wall in commercial dollar wise, because Death Sentence, Dead Silence, both commercial and critical failures. And it's a shame because I like both movies, but both of them didn't make any money. Both of them didn't make any noise. And after Death Sentence, he kind of took a hiatus from the director's chair. He produced a lot of the Saw movies. He was collecting his money. And, it's interesting to see where he was in his career before he came to make Insidious, because, a lot of people could say, hey, this was the most important movie of his career. And I sort of believe that to be true, because if this movie comes out and flops, I don't know if he would have made anything after this. And now, after the success of the first Insidious movie, look at where his career has gone. I mean, they asked him to make one of the Fast and Furious sequels. He's directing the Aquaman movies. He came back to the horror genre with Malignant. It's very interesting to see, what his career path would have been had the first Insidious not become the success that it did. And I remember seeing the trailer, it caught my eye, and I'll never forget going to the theater that night to see Insidious. And cool enough, now people probably question, hey, you're 13 years old. How the hell did you get into the theater? Cool enough, this is a PG-13 horror movie, which right off the bat, you're probably like, oh man, I bet it's ballless and gutless, and horror should always be rated R. And I am one of those people usually. But this little movie right here, when we saw it in the theater, we absolutely had a fucking blast, and we're scared shitless. We shit our pants. We were throwing popcorn and soda and babies into the air. I'll never forget, I was with my buddy Brandon. He jumped at a scene so bad, he flung his legs up and kicked the seat. And this fucking giant guy who looked like fucking William the Refrigerator Perry turned around, and he was ready to kill my friend Brandon. It was that type of night in the theater. I mean, everybody having a good time, grabbing onto each other, throwing shit in the air, commenting on the film. To me, exactly the reason why I love a good old school horror movie in the theater. And to me, this was the coolest movie experience I've ever had in my life in the cinemas, because it was just so electric. The crowd was electric. It added an extra layer to an already great movie. And that's why I really wanted to start this review off with discussing a little bit of the backstory of James Wan and how important this film really played into his career and the success that he's kind of been earning ever since this movie came out, and how important it was to me at the young age of 13. I couldn't go into a horror movie without sneaking in. Cool enough, I got to see this, paid my money, and had a ball of a time in the theater. So it's pretty cool. Patrick Wilson was awesome as Night Owl in The Watchmen. Dude, I love Patrick Wilson in these movies, and he does a really, really good job. I like him a lot as an actor. I always remember him in Hard Candy. He and Ellen Page, well, now it's Elliot Page, but he and Elliot Page, I mean, the performance of those two in that movie. And when she cuts his yoo-hoo off, holy shit, that is a really uncomfortable horror movie to me. I absolutely love Hard Candy. I haven't seen Hard Candy. Great psychological horror film with Patrick Wilson and Elliot Page. Those two together just gave great performance. Sadly, I think those awesome theater experiences are gone. Yeah, no, AJ, I gotta have to agree with you. And it's cool around here. They used to do before COVID, the Retro Picture Show, which was this awesome thing where they'd show retro 35 millimeter horror movies. And, you could go to the theater. It was double features. We saw Friday the 13th and Carrie and Black Christmas and Silent Night, Deadly Night, and so many fun retro screenings. And that was the closest thing you could get to an old school horror movie experience, that fun theater experience. And now it's like, I don't know. I sort of think those are missing. Like, I haven't had a great experience in a theater in a long time. Like, I haven't had this type of experience. And I'm glad that I did because, if theaters become a thing of the past and someday there are no more theaters, I will fondly look upon this night that I went to go see this movie and how important and special this was for me in my youth to see a horror movie that was not just new, but fun to see with other people, and I think that goes a long way. At least to me, it does. But let's get into the film at least. I have a little plot synopsis and we can jump right in to this son of a bitch. A family looks to prevent evil spirits from trapping their comatose child in a realm called the Further. Yes, James Wan's Insidious. To me, one of the all-time great haunted, I guess can you really call it a haunted house? Because it's not the house that's haunted, it's your son. One of the great haunted house creepy horror movies of our generation to me, and a really cool movie because whereas Paranormal Activity was really the film that gets the credit, and I think the reason that movie gets the credit is because how well it was marketed and how much noise that it made and the night vision, and again, people grabbing onto each other, being afraid in the movie theater. That movie really set the world on fire and started a big trend of paranormal movies again. But I dare to say that I think of all the movies that it spawned, I think Insidious is not only the greatest movie that it spawned, I think it's the best movie of all of that paranormal, phase that we went through at that time, even better than Paranormal Activity. Made it on a shoestring budget of about $1.5 million. So kind of returning back to his roots of Saw. Saw was made on a budget of $1 million and then made all of this money. Whereas this was made on a budget of $1.5 million and goes on to gross about 97 million worldwide. So a huge, almost, pretty much a 96 times profit on their film. I mean, that's fucking wild stuff right there. And I'm happy that it did because this is one of those horror movies that I really adore. It basically tells the story of this family. They move into a new home, the classic haunted house horror movie setup, like the Amityville Horror, like Burnt Offerings, like so many other old school haunted house horror movies. It starts that same setup, the husband, the wife, the kids. And one of the kids, one night he's in the attic, he's messing around and he thinks he sees something. And he falls off the ladder. He's frightened by what he sees. And then that night he goes to bed and does not wake up. He's in a coma. And the parents they do not know why. The doctors don't know why. And basically all these creepy things start happening around the house. And James Wan really made an impact with his scare sequences in this film because Dead Silence is a scary film. Saw is more of a torture psychological horror film. Dead Silence was a nice kind of movie with scare sequences. But this one, to me, of all James Wan's films, takes the cake with the scare sequences and its use of sound and sound design. This is a great movie to watch if you have speakers or a subwoofer or a sound bar. I watched this just last night again to prep for this show, and literally the sound, I think, is arguably the most important thing in this movie. The subwoofer, the jump scares, it'll shake your fucking house. It's really something. And Joseph Bishara, of course, he does the music in this movie. He does an excellent job. He also plays the lead antagonist, funny enough. Like, how many horror movies are you going to have your musical composer play the lead antagonist of your film? It'd be like Harry Manfredini playing Jason. It's like, wow, like, really? They got him to play the lead antagonist? Very cool stuff, but he does a good job. I think there's a couple of scare sequences that I really want to run through here. There's a great one where the mother is playing this song on the piano. She's one of those sort of like, she dreams to be big in the music world. She's playing this song on the piano and she has the baby monitor where you could kind of hear what's going on in the baby's room or whatever. And you hear whispering on it. And she sort of looks at it. She picks it up, kind of tries to listen to the whispering. And then all of a sudden it's a yell. And she drops it, goes running up the steps, runs into the room, and there's nobody there. And the baby's hysterical crying. And just like, again, you don't see anything there, but there is a payoff. The use of sound design to make you jump. Holy shit. And I know a lot of people, they denounce jump scares, especially people my age. They go, oh, jump scares, they're cheap, they're this, they're that. I hear you, I do, and I think to an extent when they're overused, when they're used to an excess, jump scares can be very cheesy and cheap. I understand that. However, when used right, when used sparingly, they could be used to perfection. I point to all the slasher movies of yesteryear. Friday the 13th Part 2, there's a cat that jumps out at fucking Adrian King in the beginning. Some will call that cheesy and cheap. I don't. It made me jump as a kid. I don't think well-used jump scares are a bad thing. I know a lot of people feel that way now. But this is a movie that uses its jump scares to perfection. There's a great scene where Patrick Wilson and Rose Byrne, the two leads, they're laying in bed and they hear a knock at the door. And Patrick Wilson goes down the steps and goes to see there's nobody at the door. Then they hear the baby crying. The mom goes into the room and it's a delayed jump scare as we see the baby in the crib and this kind of figure right behind the curtain. And you see it for a few seconds, then they play the musical kind of noise cue. And you just jump. I mean, I'll never forget seeing that in the theater, just jumping out of my fucking seat. Like, holy shit. Because you don't see it at first. You kind of have to be looking for it. And then when you see it, you jump. And it's just amazing, amazing use of a jump scare in horror film, in my opinion. I think it's really well done here. And it scared the shit out of me. I will tell you, when I saw this, I mean, we were jumping to hold on to each other like, to me, that's what horror is all about. At least a good night out in the theater, seeing an opening night with a sold packed crowd hanging from the rafters, if you will. That's why I love horror. I mean, it's a big reason for it. But I do think this one has some decent acting. Of course, Patrick Wilson, Rose Byrne, they do a good job. Ty Simpkins plays the lead kid that falls into the coma. Of course, you have Leigh Whannel show up as one of the paranormal investigators in this movie. And, he has his buddy, and they're kind of become like comic relief as the series goes on. I really like them. Of course, Specs and Tucker. I really like them together. I think they were a lot of fun. And, then, of course, you have Lynn Shea show up as the sort of like, paranormal expert in this film, the woman that knows more and can see into the further. And it was really cool to see Lynn Shea show up in another horror movie, because we all remember her from being in the Nightmare on Elm Street, the original, being the teacher. Fast forward all these years later, she shows up as like, one of the most important parts of this film series. She's in all 4 movies. Hell, she gets to be the lead of Part 4, which is really cool to see. I love Lynn Shea. I think this movie has some really good acting. Barbara Hershey shows up in this film. I always liked her from films like, The Entity and Hoosiers. I really like Barbara Hershey. But the acting is solid. And while I will say that is the acting the greatest thing? No. Is the editing a little choppy? Yes. Especially the beginning. It's funny. If you watch this film and really pay close attention to the beginning, I really want to know why the editing is the way it is, because it's not like that in the rest of the film. It's very choppy editing. Like, watch the first 15 minutes of this movie, and the edits are like crazy. Like, they'll be eating breakfast and, hey, who moved my books? I didn't touch your books. But it's like they're the most, I don't know, it's so spliced. You can clearly tell. You're like, damn, like, what the hell is going on here, man? I wonder why. That beginning is a little rough around the edges when it comes to editing. I noticed that upon my last rewatch. We have a couple comments in here. King Need Gores in the Heezy. Sup, little mama? What's going on, Corey? What's up, man? Good to see you in the Heezy. It's me. Hell yeah. Jump scares are good if you were young and with a date. Now they just suck months out of my life. Oh, really? So, I won't lie. I think well-used jump scares can work. I really do. And I think this is a movie that has a ton of them that really do work. I don't find them cheap. There are horror movies where I do find them cheap, but in this particular one, I think James Wan nailed it. The scare sequences are the star of this movie. Insidious was a great date movie. Awesome, Ben Grimm. Welcome to the Graveyard, man. Yeah, no, I was around the rightful age of like 13. So, I mean, this was a perfect movie to see. And as PG-13, really cool. There are some fun Easter eggs in this. Of course, James Wan calls back to Saw. There's a scene where Patrick Wilson is kind of grading papers. You could see the Jigsaw Billy, the Saw puppet in the background. I liked that. I think this is just a really cool horror movie. And I liked some of the visuals in it. I think it has a nice atmosphere and creep element. Of course, when we look into the further, we could see this red door with a black handle and some of the entities that they encounter. Of course, the main one that people remember is the one that looks like Darth Maul. He's like the main villain in this, played by Joseph Bishara, as I said before. just a creepy fucking entity, man. Just a creepy design. It looks like Darth Maul, but it has giant hooves and long fingernails, and it's just evil, demonic looking. There's a great scene where they're all sitting around the table, and Barbara Hershey says, listen, when Patrick Wilson's character, when you were a kid, this entity wanted to kill you. And she shows him all these photos where she got closer and closer. And it's all these kids, these childhood photos of Patrick Wilson as a kid. And every picture you could see this woman in black getting closer and closer and closer to him until the last picture, she's about to grab him. Really cool. I love those old school photos. And he's like, what does this prove? And she's like, listen, I could still feel her presence. And she looks up and all of a sudden, bam, the thumbnail, what I have for this video, Darth Maul appears right behind fucking Patrick Wilson. What? He doesn't see it. Rose Byrne doesn't see it, but the mother does. And we as the audience see it. Whoa. I mean, crazy. I remember the theater going fucking nuts for that because you don't expect it. I mean, it's broad daylight. And all these people are sitting around the table, and you don't expect a demon to just be right behind your shoulder. But again, a very good jump scare. This horror movie also kind of plays against some cliches. And what I mean by that, a lot of people with haunted house movies, they always have the critique, why don't they just leave the house, right? A lot of people watch a haunted house movie and they can't help but ask that. Well, why wouldn't you just leave the house if the house is haunted? So they do. They do leave the house in this movie. They move homes. And of course, the crazy, horrific things that are creeping them out follow them to their new home. Because, of course, in the one horror movie where the family does move away from the haunted house, it turns out that's not the house that's haunted. It's their son. Cool enough. I thought that was kind of cool that James Wan finally, all right, here, this is what happens when they move. It doesn't make any difference. They're still fucked. I like that. I think that's kind of a fun wink and kind of nod to the horror genre cliches and to the fans that always kind of roll their eyes at stuff like that. But there's another great scare sequence where Rose Byrne, and this is simple. This is, to me, this is not jump scare-ish. This is a great sequence of horror to me. Is Rose Byrne, it's a simple scene. Rose Byrne, she's taking the garbage out. She walks out the front door. She's playing this kind of nice, slow, soft, somber music on a record. She walks outside. She goes to the garbage can. She throws out the trash. And all of a sudden, the record skips a track. And it plays the old school Tiny Tim song, Tiptoe Through the Tulips. And she sort of turns. She's confused. She looks through the window. And all she sees is this little boy who looks like he's dressed from like the 1920s, dancing to the music. And she's seeing him through one window. She goes to the next and he's not there, but the music's still playing faintly in the background. So damn creepy. She runs back in and he starts fucking with her, almost trying to play with her. And if you look at certain points when she's walking out the house, even before she takes out the garbage, you could see the kid like in the very corner of the room. Blink and you miss it, but I love that that's thrown in there. To me, a really good scare sequence from James Wan. To me, this is the movie where he really came into his own. I know The Conjuring is probably his best movie, but I would argue to say that this is his most important movie. Because if this movie comes out and flops, I really wonder if he gets the job to do The Conjuring. I really do wonder. Because Dead Silence, Death Sentence were flops. Saw was the movie that kind of got him on the map, but he couldn't move into the mainstream on his own until he made another big hit. And he was only given the budget of $1.5 million. So it's not like the studio thought this was going to be a big hit. I don't think anybody that produced this thought this was going to be a monster hit. I'm guessing they were hoping to make $10 to $15 million in its theatrical run. This thing just $3 million shy of grossing $100 million in its theatrical run. And, you know, I just find that absolutely amazing that this is kind of the little movie that could. And people kind of saw this in word of mouth and it spread. And the PG-13 was an element that allowed young kids like myself to go see the movie and thus gain wider, you know, audience, I think. I remember going to school that Monday telling people about this movie and then people going to see it that Friday night. You know, the little word of mouth things that kind of made this movie popular. But I do also think that this movie has some interesting focus and tonal shifts. Of course, it starts off like you think Rose Byrne is going to be the lead character. And about an hour in, it kind of shifts to Patrick Wilson's character. And I really like that. I thought that was an interesting kind of dynamic because I thought he was a little bit more interesting of a character. He's trying to avoid it all. She's, of course, experiencing all of this crazy, insane shit. And it's terrifying. But towards the end, of course, Lynn Shea tells them that your son Dalton is haunted. He has entered the further, and there's a parasite that wants to kill your son. It has an insidious agenda, and she pretty much lays out the rules. You've got to go into the further and save him. And they're all horrified and stuff, but they put Patrick Wilson under, and into the further he goes. And I love the whole way the whole thing in the further is shot. It's very dreamsicle, misty, eerie. I love when he goes into the further. It's visually very appealing. Of course, he opens the red door, enters, and you have this really dark red layer, almost like something out of Argento's Suspiria. Just the setting of this creature's lair, chaining the sun up, chilling, sharpening his nails at the top. Of course, listening to the Tiptoe Through the Tulips. Tiptoe by the window, by the willow tree. Fucking terrifying, man. I was like fucking shook seeing this. And of course, he sees us, and they do the hooves. The hooves come towards you. Excellent stuff. I really like the whole finale in the further. I think it's a lot of fun. There's a fun seance scene in this where Lynn Shea, for some reason, they put like a gas mask on her. I remember the theater burst out laughing at that. That was like the one thing in the movie like made it all like kind of goofy and funny. Like everybody was kind of laughing at that in the theater. But I thought the rest of it was like a very well done scene, the seance scene. It's crazy. I mean, people start flying all over the room. Effective stuff. Of course, Patrick Wilson, he goes into the further. He gets his son out, but he sees the woman in black, and he has that encounter. They kind of cut. I mean, creepy, really creepy stuff. And of course, they get him out. All seems well. And of course, Lynn Shea realizes maybe there's something up with Patrick Wilson, takes a picture of him, and he is the woman in black. She has possessed him. And the film kind of sets up for this big sequel bait ending. And I remember in the theater just leaving that night being just so energized and, inspired. And because this movie is it makes an emphatic statement, I think, in the genre of horror. I really do. It kind of subverts some tropes. Of course, instead of a haunted house, it's more of a haunted child. Using jump scares, not being ashamed to use them, using them effectively. And when you use them, they are a real threat. There's a lot of real threats with these horror jump scares. Another one, Rose Byrne. She's kind of laying in bed at night, and this creature is out on the patio going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. He walks back and then comes back this way, but he's in the room now and just attacks her. And holy shit, like he starts licking her face. I mean, wow, like you don't expect that. Usually, to me, a cheap jump scare, he's going to come in, go blah, and then disappear. No, he charges at her and starts licking her fucking face. Like, holy shit, man. Like, to me, that's not a cheap jump scare at all. That's horror done right, in my opinion. And I don't know. I think the world of this movie, because to me, it's a movie that the genre kind of needed at the time. It was a shot in the arm for the genre. And it was, to me, the most important movie of James Wan's career, like I said, because I don't know without this movie if he has the career that he's gone on to have. Because The Conjuring, I think, is his best movie, but I would say that without this, I don't even know if he gets that job. I really don't. I think this really made people remember how good and talented James Wan is as a filmmaker. And Leigh Whannel does a good job as the writer. Don't get me wrong. I really like Leigh Whannel too, and he writes all of these movies. And I think he's just fantastic. I really like Leigh Whannel and James Wan. It's cool to see the team that brought You Saw and Dead Silence come back for one last kind of collaboration together with Insidious. I think it was a really important horror film at the time. My favorite of that year. I love Insidious. To me, a damn good horror movie and a horror movie that if you're going to watch this, if you haven't seen this, and you don't know, granted, I've gone through some of the scare sequences, but if you have a sound bar or speakers or a bunch of friends and you want to have a fun pizza movie night, this is a perfect one to pop in because it's scary, it's effective, it's well acted, it's a damn good movie to me. Insidious, I'm gonna have to. I know people aren't gonna like this. I'm gonna go 10 out of 10. I fucking love this movie. It's very special to me. One of the horror movies that in my young youth kind of caught my eye. And to this day, 12 years later, watching it last night, it's still just as effective as the day I watched it in the theater 12 years ago. So James Wan's Insidious. I love this movie. Highly, highly recommend you pick up this Blu-ray. You could probably get it for dirt cheap. I'm sure this one will come to 4K sometime soon. Maybe this and The Conjuring will. But Insidious for now, I love this movie. Highly recommend. Let's see. I'm glad he got the goofy paranormal investigators out of the way before he did The Conjuring. Brother Tom's in the house. Tom, welcome to the graveyard. You know, I I agree with that, and it's funny because I went to see The Conjuring, and I was like, "Oh my god!" Like I'm so excited for this. And I walked out of The Conjuring like he just made his best movie. Like that's his masterpiece. This one, it is a little bit more tongue in cheek. Like there are more laughs in here than there's going to be in The Conjuring, but I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. I would even argue the scare sequences in this are scarier than The Conjuring. I know that's a big debate. People argue which is the scarier of the two movies. I say The Conjuring's the better movie, but Insidious is the scarier movie. At least that's just how I feel. I do like the Tucker and Specs. I think they're funny. I like them together. Angus, I always forget the actor that plays Tucker. I want to get his name here. It's Angus something. Angus Sampson is Tucker, and then of course Leigh Whannel plays Specs. So cool, you see get the writer is in the movie. I really like to see them together. They're fun comic relief. Like every time you see them, they're introduced. Tucker's eating something like a hot pocket or an ice cream cone. The humor's okay. Like it's not like that Marvel humor that's in your face. It's just okay. It's a little bit of relief from this crazy demonic shit that we've been watching, but it doesn't overtake the film or hurt the film on its serious side, in my opinion. Tiny Tim, he was, man. And like, it's funny. It's one of those songs you never think is going to be scary. Tiptoe Through the Tulips, but they made it work here. It's similar to how they used John Denver music in the original Final Destination. How the hell do you make Rocky Mountain High scary song? But they did it. Like, to me, that's really well done horror filmmaking too. Funny enough, another James Wan directed that movie. So cool enough. You were so good at describing these movies. Oh, thank you. I saw Insidious and thought it was okay, but you had me thinking I should give it another try. Yeah, no, I mean, I know quite a few people that think this movie is just kind of meh. But I don't know. I think it's just for me, it was maybe a bit of nostalgia. I don't know. I mean, 13 years old, I hear like AJ, it's prime example. AJ's a little bit older than me. He tells stories of, oh, I saw this at the show. I saw that at the show. And these are horror movies that I grew up. I had to rent a lot of the movies that he'll talk about and say I saw at the show. So I don't have that same exposure. Like I never saw Friday the 13th, the original in the theater in 1980. I wasn't alive. So a lot of these movies that I grew up loving, I didn't have that same theatrical cinematic experience. And I do think that goes a long way. Now, don't get me wrong. I still love those movies. Those movies are still effective, but shit, man, like I wonder what would my reaction have been if I didn't know, I did know Jason was going to jump out of the water, but imagine seeing that with a crowd, Jason jumping out of the water at the end. And imagine seeing Carrie in the big screen when Carrie kind of sticks her arm out of the grave and grabs, Sue. I mean, holy shit. Like I could only imagine. I wasn't alive at the time. So movies like this, I mean, this Cabin in the Woods, The Conjuring, these are movies that I got to see in the theater in their theatrical run. So there are a lot of them are kind of special to me. So that's maybe part of it. Maybe I'm overrating it a tad. I don't know, but that plays a big, element and factor to me. But I am a big fan. I think Insidious is a damn good movie. To me, it's inspiring to see what they did on such a low budget. This film was shot in 3 weeks. It was a rush job. They told him you got to finish in less than a month, and he hadn't directed anything in 4 years. So, and they released this on April 1st. April Fool's Day was the release date of this. I don't think they had much faith in this, but this thing really caught word of mouth fire. And I don't know. I think it's a damn scary movie. Is it a masterpiece? I don't think so. I don't think anybody would say that. To me, it's just very near and dear. It just has a kind of special place in my heart. And I don't know, being the big James Wan fan that I am, I'm glad that even though he was rushed, even though he didn't have a lot of money, he did exactly what he did with Saw. He made a lot out of nothing. That's something that George Romero did in his entire career. He loved to take, write his vision, write his dream, go for it while not having much. Dawn of the Dead, my favorite movie of all time, half of the main cast were hired from a diner. Think about that. David Emge and Scott Reiniger were working at a diner. They weren't even actors. He was like, hey, you want to be the lead in my movie? 2+ hour zombie movie. And they did a great job. So it's like, that's why I love George Romero. And that's a big reason why I like James Wan. Now James Wan is working in Fast and Furious movies with hundreds of millions of dollars in budget. But it's crazy to see where the roots that he came from. And I kind of appreciate him for that. I'm old. Yeah, no, I don't mean it like that. I envy, I'm jealous because that's so cool. You got to see some of these movies in the theater. Like I couldn't imagine, but that's why Insidious is so near to me. Like I hope 20, 30 years down the road, I'm still telling the story of how I saw this at 13 years old with a bunch of friends and had a great time in the cinema. I mean, because like you said, who knows? Who knows if those days are numbered with the days that go into the horror movies in the cinema? Who knows how much longer theaters are going to be around? I hope forever they're around, but I don't know. They don't seem to, a lot of these movies, unless they're the Marvel movies, don't seem to make that much money. So, I mean, it is what it is. But thus, after Insidious' success in 2010, they decided, James Wan, we need you to come back and do the sequel. Now, they took their sweet time releasing the sequel, and generally that's a good thing. 3 years later, we get Insidious Chapter 2. Now, before I get into Insidious Chapter 2, in between, James Wan directed a little movie called The Conjuring. And I already did an episode on The Conjuring 1 and 2. I love both those movies. I think they're great. James Wan's The Conjuring, to me, is his best movie. But they had him direct The Conjuring and Insidious Chapter 2 back to back. Insidious Chapter 2 was second. And apparently, I don't know if this was a rush job, but they wanted him to pretty much, he didn't have any layoff from directing The Conjuring. I mean, he went literally probably weeks, then right back into production for Insidious Chapter 2. And to me, it shows. Because after I walked out of the theater in The Conjuring, I said this word for word, that was James Wan's best movie. I walked out of Insidious Chapter 2 in the theater, and I said word for word again, that was James Wan's worst movie. And I still feel that way. I think Insidious Chapter 2 is a big step down from the first film. And I know a lot of people are probably going to be upset by that. I know some people that think it is the best of these four. I don't know what you're smoking because I don't care for this movie hardly at all. I think it's the weakest of the four. And I was very excited. I remember opening night. We were fucking excited again, looking to recapture that electric that I had gotten to the theater 3 years earlier. Of course, I was 16 by this point. I think, wouldn't that be junior year of high school? I was super excited. I mean, I was so excited. We went an even bigger group this time. And it ended, and I walked out disappointed. I was like, damn, like, what a fucking disappointment. I remember just kind of walking to the car and being like, that's it? Like, shit. Like, that's kind of the raw reaction I had from this movie, but we can get into it here and my reasons as to why I don't like this. But first, I guess I could drop a little plot synopsis. Insidious Chapter 2, the Lamberts believe that they have defeated the spirits that have haunted their family, but they soon discover that the evil is not beaten so easily. Yes, Insidious Chapter 2. I think this is a great case of horror burnout for James Wan. I think he gave everything he had with Insidious. I think he gave everything he had with The Conjuring. I think with this movie, I think he was fucking burnt out. I think they should have given him more time or had somebody else direct this movie. And that's crazy for me to say, I know, because I love James Wan. And if you had asked me then, Grande, would you have rather had somebody else direct this movie? I was like, hell no, James Wan's got to direct it. But it shows that he was a little bit burnt out at the time. Because while this movie it has okay moments. Okay, so the scare sequences, that being the highlight of this film. I love this film for its scare sequences. This film, it has okay scare sequences. They're nowhere near the level of the first movie, but that's probably the highlight of this movie too, is some of the scare sequences. This movie has the classic sequelitis case of fucking explaining and over-explaining too much. The first film was very ambiguous. We don't know why these demons are after this particular family. We don't know why the lady in black has targeted Patrick Wilson, and we never needed to know why. It's not something we needed answered. This movie answers all of that. Oh, the woman in black? Oh, well, that was really a man dressed in drag, and his mother wanted him to be a fucking girl, like Sleepaway Camp. Spoiler alert, they totally rip off Sleepaway Camp, the ending of the original, where the mother, we always wanted a little girl. And they kind of tell you that, Angela was a boy the whole time. The entity that we thought was this old creepy woman was really a man in drag the whole time that tortured and killed women, the black dressed fucking bride. Like what? Really? I just don't care for explaining that. To me, you're really kind of demystifying what made that character scary. It was just a creepy old looking woman. And I understand that the person in the first film that was acting as the creepy old woman was a man. So I don't know if that gave Leigh Whannel the idea, let me make that a thing into the streets. Like, no, like it's very forced and it's very over the top. Like you can't be explaining that. I think that's a little too much to me. Of course, you have this opening sequence where Patrick Wilson's a child and they're kind of exorcising the demon out of him. And then throughout this rest of this movie, weird things are going on in the house again, which the scare sequences, like I said, they're okay, but they're nowhere near as good as the first film. A lot of them, in fact, kind of derive from the first film. They do the baby monitor thing again. They do a lot of the same gags where I'm like, shit, like, I mean, come on, James Wan, you can do better than this. But I really do think he was burnt out. I do. I don't know if he'd ever admit it, but I think for sure he was like, all right, I've had it at this point. Like, I don't want to, I need a little bit of a rest. I think they should have given his time, and maybe this movie would have been better. Patrick Wilson, of course, he is playing the heel in this movie, but he's trying to pretend that he's okay because he's been possessed by this black bride. I mean, Patrick Wilson's performance is okay, but we as the audience, we know he's evil the whole time. Whereas a lot of the characters in the film, they don't find out until about an hour in. So we're way ahead of the characters in the movie. And it sort of hurts it because it hurts to create any suspense. It would be more fun if we didn't know. It'd be more fun if, holy shit, is it or isn't it? And they don't really, it's pretty fairly obvious from the word go that he is, the one, because we saw him kill Lynn Shea in the previous film. You have a lot of scenes in this that take place in the further, not nearly as atmospheric or dreamsicle or visually interesting. Like this first movie, it had so many interesting things. There was a family at one point where they were all massacred down by this shotgun. No explanation. Great stuff. Like I don't need any explanation. It's effective the way it is. Insidious 2, it's like, oh, we got to explain why we did this. Oh, all these demonic ghosts, they were her victims. Okay, cool. Like we're going to explain that. Like, God damn it, like, why are you explaining everything? It's just one of those classic, has the case of sequelitis, man. It's just, it makes me roll my eyes every time I watch it. I'm like, damn, like, why did they go this route of any route to go? It kind of baffles the mind. But, I mean, as far as the acting, it's okay. I think visually it's appealing. I think the film has a nice color palette. I mean, that's, of anything, James Wan brings a nice color palette to this film. I think at times it visually looks very nice. But I would say a good 80% of this movie takes place in the house and not much really happens. It's easily the longest Insidious film. It's the most poorly paced. And it really, I mean, aside from a few scare sequences, it's very forgettable for me. I mean, the one, probably the best one is the mother is sitting on the steps and she gets a call from the police and they say, listen, we don't think it was your husband that killed Elise. Okay. All of a sudden, this baby carriage that she had pushed to the side, or this baby kind of walker, it comes back and it lights up. And she's like, what the hell? And she kind of pushes it back. And then she turns and, don't you dare! All this fucking woman just bitch slaps her and she goes flying and gets knocked out. That was scary. That was very well done scare sequence. But the rest of it, man, kind of weak. I really do find this one a little weak. Leigh Whannel and of course Angus Sampson, they come back as Tucker and Specs. They're okay. They have a couple of fun moments, but nothing incredible, nothing really to run home about. They bring Lynn Shea back at like the hour and 20-minute mark, and she just I literally swear she just shows up. She's just like, oh, hey, I'm here. I'm going to help you. Like, where the fuck were you the first hour and 20 minutes of this movie, bitch? Like, what the fuck were you? The whole movie, they're like, oh, we need to contact her. We need to contact her. And they don't what? Like, I just very fucking poor. I think this is a poor sequel. Maybe this is an example more of poor writing on Leigh Whannel's part because I don't like what it explains. But I gotta say that I think James Wan, had a misstep here too. I don't think this is nearly as scary, creepy, atmospheric, or effective as the first movie. And, maybe it was a case of overhype. Maybe it was a case of I went in expecting too much after the first movie. It's possible. But at the same time, I rewatched this movie just last night as well. I watched them back to back, and I still feel the same way. I think it's a far inferior sequel, Insidious Chapter 2. I don't know. It never did for me what it does for a lot of other people. I know a lot of other people say it's the best of the sequels. It's the best of the franchise. I don't really see that at all. I don't. I think it has a couple of interesting shots, color palette wise, and a couple of interesting scare sequences. Maybe the performance of Patrick Wilson is a redeemer. I like Patrick Wilson as an actor, and he does a good job playing the sort of, is he or isn't he, even though we know he is, which to me takes a lot of the suspense out of it and hurts any chance he could have at having a great performance. But I don't know. For me, Insidious Chapter 2 is a big swing and a miss. And a classic case of over-explaining things from the writer and horror burnout from the director. And it kind of comes together and it's a forced sequel. It's like, fuck, like, I wish you had just taken your damn time. But I guess 3 years was a long enough layoff, and their whole idea was, hey, we'll piggyback this off the success of The Conjuring, because it was released a month later. Conjuring comes out in August of 2013. This comes out in September of 2013. So 2 months, 2 straight months, you have back-to-back movies directed by James Wan released in the theater, and The Conjuring sets the world on fire. This movie, though, kind of, big swing and a miss, big fart in the wind for me. Kind of just came and went, and I was upset, and I was like, damn, like, I guess that's it for Insidious. This sets up for a sequel, which we to this day have never got, despite there being an Insidious Chapter 3 and Chapter 4, which a lot of people were going to get into those. Those are prequels, not sequels. So this is technically, continuity-wise, the last one. We have yet to see what comes after this. They set up this big kind of cliffhanger ending where Lynn Shea sees this thing in the dark, and we don't see what it is, and that's going to be the next one. Nope, that never, to this day, we've never got that film. So I don't know. I think Insidious Chapter 2 is a fail. I can't give this one the pass. It hurts me to say it. I think it's James Wan's weakest film. Granted, I haven't seen like his Fast and Furious movies, or, I haven't seen that. But I would say this is his weakest effort as a film director. It hurts me to say, but I do think this is a weak film. For me, this is going to be like a 4.5 out of 10. I think it has elements that are good, but that's it. Just elements. It's truly an overrated movie. And like I said, it's just a very forced sequel, over explanation, horror burnout, and it shows. To me, it shows. I don't know. I'd be interested to hear people defend this movie, because I know people do like it. I don't know. I'm just not one of them. Your part 2 reaction was my Blair Witch reaction. Yeah, no, I mean, I'm assuming you went to the theater really hyped. Yeah, no, I remember when I first saw Blair Witch Project, I was the same way. I was hyped, and I didn't get out of it what everyone, like, I didn't, like, the first time I watched it, I didn't say it was a masterpiece. I thought it was creepy. I thought it was effective. I just didn't think it was a masterpiece. It wasn't until the repeat watchings of it where I was like, damn, like, I just get into the lore and the simplicity and how it was made. And I don't know. It's almost like you become the fourth member of that crew. That's all. I don't know. That's a movie I've grown to love over time, The Blair Witch Project. I just love that movie over time. But I agree. The first time I watched it, I didn't go ape shit like everybody else. I was like, I don't know, slightly overrated. But upon rewatching, I was like, damn, like, fuck, like, I fucking dig it. Miss C is in the house. Hey, Grande, and everyone in the chat. Hope all your night is good. Cheers, Miss C. Welcome to the graveyard. Red Rusty's in the house. Love this franchise, but still hold the two Sinister films slightly above it, but still love Insidious. I love Insidious too. I have yet to see Sinister 2. Because I heard everybody and their mother say it was bad. But it's interesting. If you hold the two Sinister films over this, it means you may be a fan. At least I think so. If so, very cool. I'm interested to hear that. Good evening. Yes. And all of the creepers. Yeah, no. Insidious Chapter 2, though, to me, a big swing and a miss. And in a sequel that, to me, of these 4 is easily the weakest. I will briefly go into box office because it made a nice chunk of change. This was made for the budget of $5 million, so almost 5 times the budget the original movie had. This made 161.9 million worldwide, so about 162 million worldwide. That's crazy, man. That's absolutely nuts. This was released on Friday the 13th. What a great day to release it. And movie grossed 83 million in the States, 78 million overseas. So this movie did pretty well overseas and in the US. So, I mean, a big success, and understandably so after the original movie. I mean, after the original movie, I can totally see why this was a big hit, because it really called for it. And I'm happy that it made a lot of money, but at the same time, I thought the series was over. I didn't think they were going to make a part 3 despite how good it did. But 2 years later, they make Insidious Chapter 3. And now I can walk you guys through where I was at here with this movie. I had the opposite kind of reaction when I heard it was coming out. Oh, man, the second one was a big disappointment. I heard that James Wan was not coming back to direct. Instead, his protege, the guy that was writing Saw and Dead Silence and Insidious alongside him all of these years, Leigh Whannel, was going to get the shot to direct. Now, I was excited for Leigh Whannel because I like Leigh Whannel. And it's funny because he's gone on to direct some kick-ass horror movies. He directed The Invisible Man. I believe he was the lead in the movie Cooties, a fun zombie movie about kids, kind of taking over this school of teachers, a fun little zombie movie, kind of a comedy too. But I was excited for Leigh Whannel, but I went into this thinking there is no way this is going to be worth a shit. And I was totally like, wow me, because there's no chance you're gonna. But this movie was a pleasant surprise. And dare I say it, I think this is the best of the sequels. And I thought this was a damn good movie. And we're going to get into this. We're going to do, again, a brief plot synopsis. A prequel set before the haunting of the Lambert family reveals how gifted psychic Elise reluctantly agrees to use her ability to contact the dead in order to help a teenage girl who has been targeted by a dangerous supernatural entity. Yes, Insidious Chapter 3. A very pleasant surprise for me. Another movie that I saw in the theater. I saw all four of these in the theater. Cool enough. I remember going to the theater that night being like, ugh, expecting bad. I really was expecting bad because I thought the last film was the big disappointment. I was expecting this was going to be where the train got wrecked. And of course, horror has that cliche of trilogies. Okay, this is going to be the third and the last and the most inferior or whatever. I had no idea it was a prequel. They did not in their ranking of or in their promotion of it mention that it was a prequel. Nobody ever mentioned it was a prequel. So I went into it thinking it was going to be a continuation. The opening scene, we have our lead actress played by Stephanie Scott, who does a good job in this movie. Unfortunately, she hasn't gone on to do too much. She went on to do some Lifetime movies here, I see, and one of them with Judd Nelson holding her cat. What the fuck? Judd Nelson? Jesus Christ. Judd Nelson holds this bitch captive in a Lifetime movie. You know that's bad. You just know that's fucking bad. I don't even have to see that. You just know for a fact that fucking Judd Nelson. Hey, smoke up, Johnny. That would be, oh my God, that's just bad. But I digress. She knocks on the door of Elise, of course, played by Lynn Shea, who is alive. Of course, you've watched the original film, she's dead. Now in this film, she's all of a sudden she's alive. Okay, wow. You realize in the first 2 minutes it's a prequel. Holy shit, I didn't realize. This girl wants to contact her dead mother because she feels like she's had unfinished business with her. She's only like 16 or 17. She's an aspiring actress, and she goes to New York City and the early going to audition for a play. The director that's auditioning her is James Wan. I thought that was a very fun kind of cameo for the former director of the first two films. He's kind of there going, do you want to try this later and come back? He's being like the very snobby director. I thought that was funny. Like, oh shit, James Wan. Very funny kind of Easter egg there. She doesn't do the greatest at her audition and she's crying about it. Her friend is trying to console her. Listen, things are going to be okay. She gets up and a crazy fucking jump scare where this totally caught me off guard when I first saw it. She gets wrecked by a fucking car, snaps both her legs and ankles, and is basically, in a leg, a waist below body cast throughout most of this movie. She's kind of resting up. And then all of a sudden, this evil entity with this kind of breathing mask is following her, and in her dreams and while she's awake, and all of these creepy kind of things play out. Now, I think the main reason why this movie works better than part two is it has heart. I think that's what makes this movie shine a lot more than Insidious Chapter 2. What do I mean by that? You get a lot more about Lynn Shea and her background. And especially you get that in the fourth film. We get a ton about Lynn Shea. The fourth one is really Lynn Shea's big spotlight. She is the lead of the film, which is cool to see. But with this movie right here, I like the heart that it has. It is a nice heart to it because, of course, they go into that the mother was killed very young. And of course, the father is having a hard time raising both kids, and he wants the daughter to kind of take care of the son, like if she was the mother. And why don't you ever talk about mom? I loved her, and you always seem to avoid it, and you don't ever want to mention her. And he says, I see your mother every day. I see her in you, and I'm having a hard time. I didn't sign up to be a single father. I'm just trying to get by. I like these character moments. They add a kind of dramatic element to a horror film, which a lot of people are going to go, what? I don't want to see that. But it works. It really does work here. It gets you a little bit invested in these characters. And when the scare sequences happen, I think they're pretty decently well done. Is Leigh Whannel James Wan? No. But he did learn some stuff while being behind and next to and on camera for James Wan all throughout the years. He learned how to film some decent scare sequences. Like I said, not as good as James Wan, but who the hell is, especially nowadays. I think Leigh Whannel does a good job in the director's chair here. And I remember going in to see this being like, oh man, a writer getting a first-time directing job. Like, I don't know how can this work? And it worked. It really did work, I thought. There's an interesting scare sequence where this girl, she's knocking on the wall and she thinks she's flirting with her neighbor. And she's the, knock, 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 knock. She thinks he's there and it's not. She's texting him and she's like, oh, I have fun doing this with you. And he's like, I'm not home. She's like, what the fuck? And kind of turns, and there's an entity there. Creepy. There's scenes where this entity tries to throw our lead out the window. There's a scene where he possesses her and he tries to kick off the leg braces and walk towards people, even though her legs are pretty much broken. Some creepy ass shit. There's some good creep elements here, and they work. Of course, you get the origin story of how Tucker, Specs, and Lynn Shea all kind of came together, which I thought was kind of cute, and they have some fun character moments. There's another seance in this movie, which, again, not as good as the one in the original, but solid enough. Solid enough. Rough around the edges, but solid enough. But I really like the finale. I think the finale is where this thing kind of shines its brightest, where Lynn Shea goes into the further to try to save this girl from the entity that's taking over her. And she tells her, listen, you have to fight it. You can't let it beat you. And the spirit of her mother kind of helps her defeat this big bad ghost. And it's a very emotional moment where the mother kind of shows up and you're like, oh my God, like, holy shit, she shows up and they ask her, were you there when I auditioned? Were you there during the rough times? And you go to see that even though this mother died prematurely, she's there watching over her in her roughest and greatest moments. And I liked that. I think this film adds such a nice heart to the series. A movie that you go into probably expecting, all right, I want to be scared, I want to be terrified. It has good scare sequences, but I think what really makes this one shine the best and brightest of the sequels is its heart. I like it. I think has nice dramatic elements, very good acting from everybody around. I want to get people's names here. I think the father is Dermont Mulroney. He does a good job as the father. I love Leigh Whannel, Angus Sampson, Lynn Shea. They all reprise their roles. Steve Coulter reprised his role. It's a very small role in this, but I think everybody, the supporting cast, does a good enough job. This movie, to me, while it's not a masterpiece, it's not one of the greatest sequels of all time, I do think it was a fairly decent surprise because I went into the theater thinking, there's no way you're going to impress me. And it somehow did. Granted, not a scary movie, not a great, horrific movie, but a movie that does the little things right. And I think the little things go a long way, especially nowadays. It's very rare you see a third film in a series that brings this much heart and developed characters and decent enough scare sequences, good story and plot, and deriving from the first film, right? Because the second film, a lot of it feels like same shit, different day. This film doesn't really feel like that. Maybe towards the ending when they do the seance and they bring back the paranormal investigators, they meet each other. Maybe there it feels a little bit same shit, different day. But the whole movie leading up to that, no way. It feels very original and it just feels like a possession movie almost. But it's effective. It really is. I think it's a solid movie. I think it's creepy when it has to be creepy, and I think it brings a lot of heart. There's, again, another sequel bait ending, of course, referencing the first film, which, again, I think this was totally meant to be the last one because this one sets up sort of pretty much setting up how they're going to go into the first one. But they sort of go away with that and made a fourth film. Cool enough. But we're going to get into that just in a second. Red Rusty says, I love Sinister 2. Very cool. Okay, maybe I'll have to give it a watch because I have yet to see it. That movie's like 10 years old now, crazy enough, around there. I remember the first one's 10 years old. The second one was 2016? I didn't see Sinister 2. I remember everybody just telling me it was garbage, and I was like, all right, I'll stay away. But I will give it a watch. 1, 3, 2, 4 is my ranking of Insidious. I'm very close with that. I would say 4 is better than 2. That's I would agree with the first two by far. And I could totally see somebody saying 2 is better than 4, but I didn't mind 4 either. I've seen at least the first 2, possibly more. I need to go back and revisit them. The first one is the best. I mean, the first one is the one most worth watching, but I do think this is a surprising sequel. And you can watch this one on Tubi, Insidious Chapter 3. You can watch the Chapter 2 on Netflix, and you can also watch Insidious Part 4, which we're about to get into, on Tubi as well. So you can watch 3 and 4 for free on Tubi. Insidious Chapter 2 if you have Netflix. The original, I don't know where this is streaming because I have the Blu-ray. So I don't know. This one, you're on your own to find this. But I highly recommend you buy this. This is a worth buying horror movie to me. But coming in for a rating in this one, Insidious Chapter 3, it's tough for me because I do like the film. I just don't think it's great. It's solid. It's solid, man. I want to say 6.5 out of 10. I think it's a 6.5 out of 10. I think the movie has enough going for it. Like I said, it does the little things, and it's easily of these 4 of these three sequels, the best sequel of the bunch, in my opinion. So that is Insidious Chapter 3. A big surprise. And once again, a big box office movie. Of course, this was made on a budget of twice of the last film. So we go from 5 million to 10 million. And this movie grosses about 112.9 million worldwide. So about 113 million against a budget of 10. Again, another very big profitable movie. Hence why I'm guessing they wanted to make a fourth one. I mean, it was a big step down money-wise from the second film because let's see. So the second one grossed about 83.5 million in the US. This third film grosses about 52 in the US. So that's a $31 million dip. So I don't know. Did people feel the same way as I did about Insidious 2? Did they not? And did they expect it to just be garbage? Didn't go see it? It's possible. I don't know. But still, you mean you grossed over $112 million against a budget of 10. It was still a ginormous profitable movie. And that leads us to the final film of the series to date, Insidious Chapter 4, The Last Key. So a brief plot synopsis here. Let's see. Parapsychologist Dr. Elise Rayner faces her most fearsome and personal haunting yet as she is drawn back to her ghostly childhood home where the terror began. Yes, Insidious the Last Key. Now, we've had a roller coaster, right? I mean, I went into the first film excited to see a horror film in the theater, PG-13, and I was blown away. I had an electric night in the movies. I'll never forget it. Insidious Chapter 2, I go in ecstatic, thinking, holy shit, how can this disappoint? Walked out disappointed. Insidious Chapter 3, walked in going, why am I here? There's no way this could be anything worth a shit. Walked out pleasantly surprised. I go into this movie, I don't even know what to think. I'm like, damn, like, I want to come in and say, okay, this is a January released horror film. Do they have any faith in it? This is Insidious 4. Does there even need to be a fourth one? I mean, I had some doubt, but also had some hope. I was like, you know what? Insidious 3 impressed me. What do you got to offer Insidious 4? The answer, another passable horror movie. To me, a pretty decent enough horror movie. Basically, this one starts off where Lynn Shea is a child and we're in her childhood home. And it's a great sequence as she's kind of talking to spirits. She's a little girl, of course. Her and her brother. The brother's a little scared of her. But the father is pissed. He is not having what she's doing. He's like, listen, stop talking to ghosts. I don't believe in them. You're fucking weird. And he actually beats the shit out of his child in the opening like 10 minutes of this movie. So you're like, damn, like right off the bat, you're like, holy shit. Okay, there's some child beating in this. So instantly like, okay, the gloves are off right now. This is a little bit hardcore. And I like the whole opening sequence in the house. I think it's creepy. I think it's effective. I think it's a nice kind of background for Lynn Shea's character. And I think the coolest thing about this movie is Lynn Shea gets to be the lead. I mean, you're talking about a woman in her late 50s, early 60s around this time that gets to be the lead of a mainstream horror film. And I think she does a great performance in this. I really do. And it's very much the most personal film of the four because it really is a personal venture for her to travel back to her childhood home and can face the fears that she believes killed her mother, killed her father, and basically scared her brother into never talking to her again. They have all of these great character elements and storylines going on. Lynn Shea, she's of course contacted by the current owner of that house, and she tells Tucker and Specs, listen, I have to do this alone. I have to do this on my own. I remember in the theater going, oh man, they're not going to be in it. Like they're writing them out of it. That's lame. But the very next scene, she's packed her bag. She's getting into the car, and they pull up in a fucking giant like RV. And it's like the Ghostbuster RV. And they're like, hey, you know, now you got to let us come with us. This was $700. Very fun character moment. Like, you may want to go through this alone. You may think you have to deal with this alone, but we got your back, Lynn Shea. I love them. I love the trio. I think it's very heartfelt. They kind of set it up nice in part 3. And then here it's nice to see them all together working on a case. I think that was kind of nice how that comes full circle. She goes to the house, of course. The owner at first seems a little bit weird. You learn that he is possessed and kind of chaining up women. You think at first, oh, is he just a creepy psychopath? No, he was being possessed by a creepy psychopath, thus chaining women in his house and stuff like that. Interesting, kind of an interesting thing. Again, I think that this movie is different enough. Like you can watch this and go, okay, I see characters from the first 3 movies, but again, it's completely its own thing. And it kind of really gives Lynn Shea the spotlight to shine and kind of carry this movie. And she does that here. Now, The director of this was Adam Robitel, I believe, and I was, very skeptical. I was like, "Damn, like, what has this guy done?" He had done I think, The Taking of Deborah Logan, which is a pretty decent horror movie. I remember it being on streaming in Netflix way back in the day. A decent enough horror movie, and he actually went on to direct both escape room films, which I actually haven't seen either, but I've heard some good things, especially about the first one. So he steps in the director's chair, and I was like, "Okay, no James Wan, no Leigh Whannel. I don't know, is this going to be a swing and a miss?" He does a decent enough job directing this. The sequences in the further, creepy enough. Again, no one came close to, even James Wan didn't come close to how he did it in the first film and how gritty and raw that whole fucking further world felt. But here, I think it's well enough done. I do think on its own two legs, this is a well done horror movie. It's like very much similar to the third one. It has a nice heart to it, has a nice story. The scare sequences are there when they have to be. It's very much a similar how I feel about the third film. But I do think there's a couple sequences I want to go into. There's a really cool sequence where this woman, she's in the further world, and of course, this the main demon of this movie, he has like keys for hands, and he stabs her in the throat and kind of turns, and while she's screaming, once he turns the key, her vocals cut out. So she's screaming for help, but no one can hear her. I thought that was very cool. I was like, oh man, how fucking interesting is that? Because I can't tell you how many nightmares or dreams I've had in my life where I'm screaming for help and there's no audio coming out. There's nothing. You can't hear me screaming. We can hear us like the very faint screaming, but no one else can. That's a big thing with dream logic. A lot of people say, oh, your teeth fall out in your dreams. I've never had that. I've had, the voice, like you're screaming for help and no one can hear you. And I thought that was cool to kind of turn the key and it's gone. I thought that was a very cool kind of sequence there. They have Lynn Shea reunite with her brother who, hey, she's weird. You abandoned me. I needed you. There's a very nice emotional scene between the two of them. Of course, Bruce Davison, I believe. I want to make sure it was Bruce Davison. I believe he is the actor that plays the brother in this. Of course, Bruce Davison. Yes, it was Bruce Davison. Of course, people remember him from films like Willard and Ben. It was cool to see Bruce Davison in this movie. Didn't expect that. And they play well off each other as brother and sister. I will say of the four, this is definitely the one with the best comic relief. I like Tucker and Specs the most in this when it comes to the funny element. There are scenes where they're trying to hit on Bruce Davison's daughter and her friend. And I think that scene's kind of funny. Like he's like, oh my God, wow. And she's like, what? She's thinking that he's amazed by her. And he goes, oh man, this is a really rare comic book. I thought that was kind of funny. There's a scene towards the end where the one girl is in the hospital bed and Tucker kind of like looks at her like this. And you think he's going to go in to make a move. And he goes, are you going to eat that? And takes her whole Jell-O thing and just shoves it in his mouth because he's just a big goof. I mean, I like that. I think that the kind of, comical sequences in this work. There's a really tense scene where Lynn Shea, she's going to go through this air vent. And she's like, oh my God, it's a tight crawl space. This is dangerous. And we're on the edge of our seat. And, Tucker goes, okay, hold on, move back. He rips the thing out of the wall, and you think he's going to be like, okay, I'm a man. I'm going to go in there and do this. He moves it, and he goes, go ahead. He just got it out of the way for her. He's not going to do anything that endangers his own life. I thought that was very funny and refreshing to see. Like, and a joke that didn't take me out of it, right? Like, sometimes these jokes, they can be too much, and the humor could be too much. And I've heard people say the humor in this movie is horrible. I don't agree with that at all. When we live in the era of the Marvel movies and all the humor in those movies, I don't think this humor takes you out of the movie at all. I thought that was a funny, like, okay, of course, this guy, that's the character. He's just like, he's a big mush, and of course, instead of going for the move on the girl, let me eat your fucking Jell-O instead. I thought that was kind of funny. I don't know. I thought the humor in this movie worked. It's the funniest of the four. Has some lighter levity moments. But I really like the finale. Lynn Shea goes into the further and knows she must confront this. She has a very personal moment with someone from her past. And, she kind of battles this demon that took her mother away from her in order to save her, niece that she didn't even know until, about 30 minutes into the film. I like it. I think, again, this movie has a nice heart to it. And I think Lynn Shea does a great job. Lynn Shea kind of steals the movie. I think she does a great job. This is a really inspiring movie. In a world where everybody talks about Jamie Lee Curtis coming back for Halloween in the same year, right? Later in 2018, Jamie Lee Curtis comes back in Halloween 2018 and, oh, this movie grossed X amount of dollars and the female lead is over 50 years old. You know what? Look at Insidious the Last Key that came out the same year of a someone over 55 years old being the lead of a horror movie, and this movie grossed $167 million. That's wild. That's a lot of fucking money for a part 4 that was released in January. Like, they pretty much set this film up to die, I think. To me, anything released in January, you're setting your movie up to die. Like, that's the point, because now it's become a staple. Who doesn't remember The Gallows? Who doesn't remember The Forest? Who doesn't remember The Bye-Bye Man? Who doesn't remember The Grudge from 2020? When I say who doesn't remember, of course, because who does remember? Who does remember those movies? Who doesn't remember? Pretty much everybody except marks like me that fucking probably went to go see most of those movies because I'm a mark and I want to see new horror movies. And people go, oh, why would you go see it if you think it's going to be bad? You never know. Who knows? Maybe you go and see one and it's worth the shit. And this was a perfect example. I didn't expect much from it, but I walked out of the theater with a smile on my face, pleasantly surprised, unlike Insidious Chapter 2. Go figure. Crazy. A movie with a good lead performance and an actress that never really got to be the lead of a big movie like this. And this movie is the highest grossing financially of the entire series, came out in January. Crazy. I think that's absolutely crazy. The film did crazy money overseas, especially made 100 million plus overseas, 67.3 million in the United States. So it was a big step up financially from 3. And I don't know. I think that this was an awesome movie too. It had the budget of 9 to 10 million, so around the same budget, and grossed about 167 plus million dollars. I mean, that's a lot of money. And hence why I think a lot of people think they're going to do a 5th film. Now, this would be a long layoff. I mean, you're talking 4+ years. None of these movies to date have had that long of a layoff. I know the idea is to have Patrick Wilson direct Insidious Chapter 5, and he's also going to star, and it's going to be the kid from the first film. He's going to be in college and all these demons are going to be conjured up again. I don't know. Like, where part of me, I would like to see Patrick Wilson direct a film, because if you look at this series, Leigh Whannel got his first chance to direct a film. Lynn Shea got her first chance to be the lead in a horror film. It would be cool to see now, okay, Patrick Wilson gets his chance to direct a mainstream high budget horror film. Very cool for him. And for him, for his sake, I do hope it happens. But I have to say, I don't know if it's really needed or wanted at this point. We could really, in all likelihood, leave it here, because I think of these 4, the first film is by far and away the best one and easily the one worth watching. Like, I can't lie. Like, is 3 and 4 solid? Yes. Should you go out of your way to watch them? Probably not. You don't have to go out of your way to watch those movies, to me. This is just my opinion. But this is the movie to really go out of your way for, to me. But I don't know. I think Insidious the Last Key, it is a solid enough movie. I would give it like a 6 out of 10. I think it's solid enough. It's one of those sequels, again. Is it that memorable? Is it something you're going to watch over and over and over? No. But again, for a 4th film in a franchise that was released in January, and probably nobody had fucking faith in it, it really did truly surprise me. And I was very happy when I left the theater. And part of me thinks, leave well enough alone. The second one is the weak link. The second one is the movie they never to this day made the direct continuation, because 3 and 4 are prequels. So if you're watching these in chronology order, it's 3, 4, 1, 2. I mean, interesting what that is. Take that with a grain of salt. I don't know. I just personally don't know if I ever would be interested in a part 5. That's just me. I would see it if it came out, because I have seen all 4 of these in theaters. I think enough of the first film to say and go see a 5th movie. But am I asking for it? Is anyone asking for it? I don't think so. I think you could leave well enough alone. But we will see. And money talks, because the last movie made $167 million in a January fucking release. So who knows? Maybe they will. Maybe they absolutely will make more Insidious films. But if I had to rate that last one, 6 out of 10. So ranking these, the original, easily the best. Part 3, a very solid follow-up. Part 4, a very solid 4th sequel. I love Lynn Shea's performance. I think she steals the entire movie. And it really, it's one of those movies I watch, and I'm very happy for her that she got this moment to be the lead of this movie. It's a solidly made film. Adam Robitel does a good job in the director's chair. And I think the scare sequences, again, work when they have to. Insidious Chapter 2 is the most disappointing. I don't care for the film. I never have. I didn't like it when I saw it in the theaters. I didn't like it when I watched it last night in retrospect. Just not a fan of the movie. but that is Insidious ranked. Let's see, we got a couple of comments here. Mentality is strange. If a clique gets the cool to hate label, the sheep follow for some reason. Yeah, no, that's very true. Like I can't tell you how many movies where now it seems like everybody gets on the bandwagon. Like that, I didn't see X, I didn't see it, but everybody's on the bandwagon of that movie. Like everybody, like, oh my god, you have to see. Same thing with Scream. Same thing with a lot of new horror movies. It's like a bandwagon, and it also works in the reverse. If they don't like something, it's a bandwagon of, oh fuck that. I agree. I think, you say down here, you want to give chance to films regardless, of what other people say. I agree with that. I wholeheartedly agree with that. Now, are there times where I'm going to agree with the masses? Sure. There's plenty of times I'm going to disagree with the masses too. So you have to really decide for yourself. I'm a big fan of it. So I want to go support it as much as I can, especially the original stuff. And that's why a lot of the January horror movie, Grande, why did you go see The Forest in 2016? I don't know. It wasn't a great movie. I don't know, but it was an original horror movie at the time, and it wasn't a sequel or a remake or a reboot or a requel. It was something new, so I wanted to go support it. But I know a lot of people don't feel that way. Can you find them on Netflix or Tubi? Yes, I was saying before. Insidious Chapter 2, you can watch on Netflix, which, again, I don't know, man. Of these four, it's the weakest to me. Insidious 3 and Insidious 4 are on Tubi for free. So you can watch those for free on Tubi. Insidious 1, it might be streaming somewhere. Like it might be on like an HBO Max. I don't know, though. I have the Blu-ray. This is the one worth buying to me. And I would assume this Blu-ray goes for dirt cheap. It's a damn good movie. Very well worth the purchase if it's not on streaming anywhere. I don't know. This is the one I didn't check because I don't own 2 through 4. So I did watch those on streaming, admittedly, but this is the one to really watch at home, especially if you have like a sound bar or subwoofer stereo system. The sound of Insidious is really what makes it truly scary. I love Insidious for that. The sound design and scares, just fucking great stuff. But yeah, that is the Insidious franchise. Insidious 1, 2, 3, and 4. Will we get a 5? I don't know. I'm thinking we will. In today's day and age, when we're getting all of these sequels, requels, what have you, I do think we are going to get an Insidious 5. So, I mean, only time will tell. And for Patrick Wilson's sake, I think it would be pretty cool, but I don't know. Now, we did end a little bit earlier on the show. I usually go like hour and a half, hour 45. Anybody wants to talk about anything else? We could. I could open up the floor. I'll take a sip of my drink in the meantime. I'm going to down this because there's only a drop left. Bottoms up, I guess. Yeah, no, if anybody wants to talk about anything, if not, no worries at all. I guess we can discuss. I mentioned at the beginning of the show what I might be doing in following weeks. We may be doing a show called When Good Directors Go Bad, where I look at the masters of horror and the bad films that they've made. That's the one I've been wanting to do for a while. Also want to do a Fulci episode leaning towards his 1970s era. I think that would be fun. New Scream rant. Dude, I already did a new Scream rant. You mean Scream 6? Rant on Scream 6? Man, I will tell you right now, I'm not. Unless I am compensated, which no one's going to do, I'm not seeing Scream 6. Scream 5 is the last Jedi of fucking Scream movies to me. That was the biggest piece of shit I've fucking seen in a long time. Like, I actually had a nervous breakdown watching that movie, man, for me. I don't know. I just really couldn't stand it. Did you watch Top Gun Maverick? Dude, no, I have the VHS of the original Top Gun somewhere over here. I love the original Top Gun. I just haven't had a chance to go see it. My aunt and uncle saw it and loved it. I've heard nothing but positive. Cruise, Conley, I hear Val Kilmer may have a cameo in it, although I wasn't sure about that. I don't know. I've heard it's a spectacle, though. I will see that eventually. Favorite Johnny Depp and Amber Heard movies. Johnny equals From Hell and Amber equals All the Love. Boys Love Mandy Lane. Now, I saw you reviewed it. I got about 10 minutes into your review. I was on my break today, but I got to watch the rest of your review. I love All the Boys Love Mandy Lane. To me, that is a great throwback to a 70s style slasher. And the director, Jonathan Levine, does a great job directing that movie because it's really about the horrors of insecurity. And what do I mean by that? I know there's a lot of scenes where the characters, they're kind of knocking each other. And, one girl calls the other one fat and the other one makes fun of one because she has a hairy vagina. And it's a movie about the horror of insecurity. And here we have Mandy Lane, this beautiful blonde bombshell that got beautiful over the summer. She was the weird girl until all of a sudden she developed over the summer. And the music in the hallway and the soundtrack and the Bobby Vinton song at the end, sealed with a kiss. To me, one of the best slasher movies of the modern era, because again, a lot of people, they're going to hear that and go, oh, is it gory? It's not. It's a very much a 70s slow burn slasher movie. And it's very much more playing along the psychology and themes of the horrors of insecurity. Even to the point where, if you notice, there's scenes where they're playing drinking games. They don't use the classic red Solo cups, which is funny. I actually have one. They don't use these classic red Solo cups. They use these yellow cups, almost, in my opinion, nodding Jallos, because, of course, the word Jallo means yellow. They're really nodding back to the 1970s. And the whole idea of that Mandy Lane and her beauty manipulated all of these people and their insecurities. Brilliant. To me, brilliant. I've done an episode on All the Boys Love Mandy Lane and The Burning, two slasher movies that I love. I believe my episode of All the Boys Love Mandy Lane is like one of my most watched videos too. I think it's like 1,000+ views. I shot it on a shitty camera too, which is a shame. But that's a great horror movie to me, man. I really like, and I want to watch your review. You did like an hour-long review, so I want to watch the rest. I promise I will. I got about 10 minutes in, and then I had to go back to work, unfortunately. But I'm sure you nailed it. Oh, good Lord, that was funny watching your script. Yeah, no, that. Holy shit, I didn't even plan to do that. Like, I watched it and it ended, and I remember like looking around being like, I've got to figure out my life right now. And then I recorded that, and that was just a raw rant. Like, I was not prepared or thinking I was going to do that. And then, whatever. Mandy Lane is my top 30 horror films of all time. So yeah, I loves it. Hell yeah. Yeah, no, I don't know if I go that far, but I love All the Boys Love Mandy Lane. To me, it's a top 10 slasher of the new millennium for sure. I love that movie. Everything different it does. In the good directions going bad, would you put Argento, or is he untouchable? Oh, he's all good directors are touchable, because I made the list. It depends on which one of these movies I'm going to get to watch first, because good directors go bad, I'm going to have to watch like 5 or 6 movies for prep. The Fulci, I have to watch like 2 movies. So it really depends on which one I have more time for. I'm going to make the decision tomorrow or Saturday. Usually Friday's my burnout day. I take a day off. I don't even think about the show. Saturday, I make my decision. Okay, what am I going to schedule out for the week? It's funny, like, people laugh at this and how serious I take this, considering I don't have a lot of subscribers or whatever. I take the show like a job. Like, I map it the fuck out before I do it. And that's really, just depends on if I get to watch all those. But Argento will be on there. And it will have a certain vampire flavor, Mateo. I think that gives it away. But if you know, you know. How about those Mets, dude? My Mets are doing fucking good. Here, I got my Met hat. Fucking, I'm diehard Met, man. Crazy enough, I'm at the game Monday night. And fucking this rookie comes up Sunday night and hits his first ever hit. He hits a home run to tie it in the 9th. Nick Plummer. It's a home run to tie it in the 9th. We went crazy, and then the Mets win it in extra innings. The next night we have tickets to go, and they rewarded Nick Plummer with the start in left field. Of course, he's batting 8th in the order. Nobody expects him to do anything. He gets a double and drives in a run his first time up. He gets a 3-run homer his second time up. Third time up, I turned to my friends. I said, we got to give this fucking guy a standing ovation. This is second day in the major leagues. We get up, we give him a standing ovation. And they fucking, on SNY TV, they film us clapping for him. Next thing you know, 2 pitches later, he gets another hit. And we went apeshit shouting MV Plummer. And we had seats in left field. We go down to the railing and start yelling at him, MV Plummer. It's just moments like that that makes me really love the sport of baseball. And a lot of that is Mets fandom and New York fandom. I know a lot of people like, what do you mean? Like, what's the difference between New York fandom? I think there's 3 places where fandom is the strongest. I would say Los Angeles, I would say Chicago, and I would say New York. I think those are the 3 big bad boys, at least with baseball. Other sports could vary. Although basketball, I think those 3 are pretty big too. Football, yeah. I mean, yeah, I would say pretty much all sports. Granted, I know nothing about hockey, so I mean, that's what it is. But like baseball, like New York sports, New York fans, they're so different. Like for example, we signed Francisco Lindor to a giant $300+ million contract. Guy's making $33 million a year. And the first year as a Met, he sucked. He was fucking terrible. And he heard it. We booed him. We fucking booed him. Not a lot of places would do that. A lot of places, all right, try again, Francisco. You'll got it, man. We might be like that the first couple weeks, but if you stink for a whole year, you're going to hear boos, buddy. You're going to hear boos because, number one, we know what you're making. You're making $33 million a year, and you're not doing good at your job. So, and hence, you're going to fucking boo. That happens, you know? But again, there's a reverse of that. And a lot of people say, oh, you're a toxic fan base if you boo your own player. No, if you come in and are expected to do well in New York and don't, you're going to hear it. If you come in and you do great, you're going to hear it. It works both ways. Nick Plummer is a prime example. Nobody knew who the fuck Nick Plummer was Saturday night. By the end of Monday night, we were chanting MV Plummer and got on fucking live television. That's how it works. It's very much a game like that. It's one extreme to another. But that's why I love New York. It's why I love the fan base. And it's just kind of magical like that. If you're great, we will take you in as one of our own. If you stink, we're going to tell you. We're going to let you know. But hopefully you turn it around. Let's see. What's out? Watch out for the Jays. Oh, a Jays fan. Dude, Vladdy. I had Vladdy in fantasy last year. Vladdy is fucking a monster. I love Vladdy, man. I also had Robbie Ray, who they let walk, and I was like, oh, man, big mistake. Gosman is such a better pitcher than Robbie Ray. They made the right choice there. And I don't know. I think they're going to put it together. Like, Teoscar Hernandez has had a slow start, and I think the Jays are a good team. Romano, I think when he's on, is an electric closer, but granted, he's had a couple, the blown save to the Skankies. Holy shit, that was a brutal blown save. He threw like one too many sliders to Judge, and he hit it to the fucking parking lot. I hate the Skankies, man. So trust me, I know we're buddies on that front because I'm sure you hate the Skankies too. Skankies suck. Chicago sports order: Bears, Cubs, Bulls, Sox, Hawks. Everything else, not my order, but the majority. Really, that's interesting. The Hawks are so low because they've had a lot of success recently. I feel like they've won a couple cups recently. I'm not a hockey fan. I know a lot of people, especially New York, because the Rangers right now are on fire. They hate me for that. Because I grew up, and this is a hockey town where I'm at. I never liked it. I never fell in love. I tried a lot. I remember watching. I was just like, I don't know. It just didn't appeal to me. Basketball, very casual. Knicks fan, not diehard. If they're good, cool. If they're bad, all right. The Garden is the most expensive fucking place to get into. You have to mortgage your house if you want to sit in the nosebleeds in the Garden. I love the Garden, but it's fucking too expensive to go see a Knicks game, especially the years when they were winning like 15 games a year. Like, no fucking way. But yeah, no, it's funny. Chicago's a big football town, and the Bears have won that one Super Bowl. That's it. But they are a football town. Same with Cleveland. The Browns. That is a Cleveland. Cleveland is a football town. Don't mistake it. Cubbies, Bulls. See, Bulls, I think would be second too, because Bulls won so many championships with Jordan. But I don't know. You would know better than me. But yeah, no, that's pretty cool. What do you think about horror film boutiques like Arrow, etc.? Oh wow, that's so funny. I bought an Arrow thing today. That's crazy you mentioned that. I have a pretty video nasty planned, calling them out. Expect a big split reaction. Some will love, some will hate big. So you don't, okay, I'm a little bit confused by the comment. You don't like Arrow? Are you not a fan of Arrow? Or do you think they're overrated? I'm confused. I think Arrow's the best. So I don't want to offend you. I think Arrow's the best with transfers, special editions. I think they're the best. They do nice sales. I like them. I love Blue Underground. I love Severin. Vinegar Syndrome put out a lot of stuff that I'm not interested in. I know they just had their big sale, but I don't know, man. For me, I don't know. I think Vinegar Syndrome is slightly overrated. Although I did cave. I got that They Call Her One Eye thing. I have to, I'm very much fucking excited to get. That's my number one most anticipated release of the year. And I feel bad I cheated on Synapse because I love Synapse. And I don't know if people have heard the whole rumor, or not rumor, but the whole beef between those two. It's fucking crazy. So Synapse was releasing a standard Blu-ray of They Call Her One Eye. Vinegar Syndrome thought it was a joke, and fucking once they found out it was real, buried Synapse and Don May Jr. and was like, oh, they're inferior cut, blah, 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 blah. Vinegar Syndrome, let me tell you something. You don't bury your competition because they're making the same release as you. That's fucking bullshit. And I think that was childish. And to say, oh, it's an inferior, blah, 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 blah. They sold those copies for $20 a pop. You're selling yours for over $50 fucking dollars. And I'll be honest, and AJ's here. If AJ didn't give me a $50 gift card for Vinegar Syndrome for my birthday, thank you, AJ. I love you. If he didn't do that, I don't think I would have dropped the $55 for your 4K. I would have been 20 on the Blu-ray from Synapse and flipped you all off. That's what I would have done. Vinegar Syndrome, I'm not, especially after this whole thing, I'm not a fan of them personally, but they do put out good stuff. I think their titles are a little bit obscure, at least for me. Let's see. Fair weather Hawks fans when they're winning. Really? Okay. Fair enough. I didn't know that. I thought they were, granted, in my lifetime, they've seemed to have won a lot. Like, at least I always feel like they're in it or win it. Like, I think they've won 2 or 3 cups in my lifetime. So that's a lot. So the Rangers haven't won one in my lifetime. The Islanders haven't won one since the 80s. So, hockey, I've never seen a team win. I think the Rangers went once in my lifetime to the finals. Grande, you know a lot about baseball. Kudos. Yeah, no, I'm a diehard baseball guy. My favorite sport. Yankees and Red Sox suck. Our division is hard to win. That dude. It is like, the Orioles suck. The Orioles have sucked for a while, but the rest of all 4 of the other teams solid. Like, I know Boston's got to a slow start, but they do have a good team. I mean, they have Devers, they have JD Martinez, they have a fucking solid team too. Like Boston, I don't think Boston's going to finish under 500. The Jays, I think, while I was skeptical about them not re-signing Robbie Ray, they made the right choice in signing Gosman, and I think Berrios is a good pitcher. I think the Blue Jays can figure it out. They can. It really all comes down to hitting consistently. Like Teoscar Hernandez, I think he drove in 100 runs last year. I don't even know if he has 20 this year. So it's, some guys have got to pick up the slack, but I think they can get there. But the Skankies, man, they're on another level right now. I fucking hate the Skankies. I have a lot of boutique Blu-rays, but I think they are lying about their motives. Really? Okay. I don't know. I mean, I like most of them. I'm not going to lie to you. But hey, Vinegar Syndrome showed their true colors. They're a little bit ugly on the inside. Yeah, it is. Speaking of ugly, Cubs wins 2010. Yeah, 3 in my lifetime. Never thought I'd see 1 and saw 3. Legit makes me cry. Yeah, no, it's funny. Like the Mets have never won in my lifetime. So like if I ever got to a day where I was like, oh, this year, where the Mets won 3 World Series, holy shit, how special that would be. But I don't know what that's like yet. I'm a big, baseball is my favorite. Football is my second favorite. Basketball, I am casual. I'll watch it. Hockey, I just could always care less. I don't know. I never really liked it. Basically they use these films and horror fans to create a needless toxic atmosphere among collectors. I've got to see this video, Red Rusty. I am very anticipating that because that's interesting. I am. That's a different topic. I don't think I've really seen anybody talk about that topic, talking about the collectors becoming toxic. I mean, that's an interesting. I hope I'm not one of those toxic collectors, but who knows? But yeah, no, we've been at this an hour and a half. I don't know if anybody wants to like one last thing or anything. If not, no worries. I'm going to make my decision Friday or Saturday what we're going to do next on the Graveyard. But I wanted to say for anyone who, like I said, who has not seen this movie, go see this movie, watch it. I think it's a damn good movie, a damn good time, damn good stuff. And the other 3 you can watch for free on streaming services elsewhere. So that's pretty cool stuff. But cheers to Insidious, cheers to James Wan and Mr. Leigh Whannel. And thank you all for watching. Everybody in the chat, I had a great time shooting the breeze with you this last 15, 20 minutes. It was a lot of fun. Everybody have a wonderful, safe, happy, healthy weekend. And we will catch you next time only on the Graveyard. Too sweet, peace. And we'll catch you next time.